All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Build Show podcast. That's right. This is my long format way to really go deep on topics that interest me and that I think will interest you. You know, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like-minded. You're probably inquisitive. You're probably a builder or a remodeler, an architect. Maybe you're thinking about building your own house in the next couple of years. And you're really trying to learn everything you can about best practices and all the things that it takes to build a really well-built house. Well, today's topic is a particularly top of mind for me because I just experienced this at my house, and I spent a ton of time trying to figure out how to future-proof my house, how to wire it correctly, how to put in the things that I would need from a low-voltage wiring perspective, meaning not high voltage, not the the 120 lines or the 220 lines that will eventually have my future Tesla truck charger in the garage, but these are all the lines that are running my Ethernet, that are running my cameras, that are running all those things that we typically call low voltage in the house. And I have a guest who has a really perfect background to talk about this. This is my Steve. This is my COO, Steve. You are my Steve, the only Steve in the organization. Steve Lesem is my COO of the company, who has a perfect background for this. So with that being said, from the Rockwell Studios here in Austin, Texas, big thanks to Builders First for their sponsor, and let's get going. All right, guys, by way of introduction, let me introduce to you Steve Lesem. Steve is my Chief Operating Officer of my home building company. Although I think if you've been listening to the podcast, you realize I really have two companies. I have the building business, and then I have this company which runs my media side of what I do called Build Productions. And Steve is integral to both businesses, really, and basically acts like my CFO, COO of both operations. Steve's a pretty interesting background, though. Steve, you are a University of Texas electrical engineering grad from the 70s, worked in high tech for many, many years in the software industry, and made the switch into the building side of the business when I, as you like to term, when I rescued you from retirement 6 years ago or so. And Steve built a beautiful house for he and his wife, and now his grandchildren come and visit quite a bit, out on the lake on Lake Travis, which is about an hour-long commute. And Steve, the reason why I'm telling this story is to credit for the podcast to begin with. Steve's had this long commute to the office, and like any good inquisitive builder, use that hour-long commute to sharpen the saw and listen to a lot of podcasts, or you have listened to a lot of podcasts, and had been saying to me for a year or two, Matt, we really need to start a Build Show podcast. I think this really is the future and allows you to reach people in a way that the Build Show on YouTube really doesn't. So huge thanks to you, Steve, for suggesting that we even do this. And as a side note, as we were talking about that, I know, Steve, you're a big fan of the Joe Rogan show. And it's kind of fun. Right before we started this podcast, Joe moved to Austin, Texas, and bought a house. And all of us in Texas or in Austin were like, gosh, I wonder which house Joe bought, knowing that he'd bought a house that was not a new home, but was a resale. It turns out Joe bought one of our houses that we remodeled not that long ago for another client who sold it to Joe. And my understanding is that Joe's podcast studio is in the guest house that we built for that original client. And our low voltage contractor who did the work in that house is still working in that capacity. So it's kind of fun. That was a huge intro to you, Steve, by the way. Probably too long, right?
That's okay. Thank you very much.
So, Steve, the genesis to this was you and I were talking the other day at the office, and you said, hey, Matt, have you heard about this deal that one of the big national production builders has come out saying that they've got a Wi-Fi certified house? And I said, no, what does that mean, a Wi-Fi certified house? Well, what it means is that they're not putting any wiring in the house. They're certifying that your wireless system will work just fine. And now they don't have to spend a nickel on any Cat 6, Cat 5e wiring through the house. What do you think about this, Steve?
I think it's a terrible idea. I mean, low voltage rough end wiring is like the cheapest thing you do almost. And why you wouldn't take advantage of the fact that that you can get to all the studs and all the rooms and easily put in the wires that you think you may need. You ought to just go ahead and do it. It's a couple of $1,000 if you go crazy.
Yeah. And if you don't go crazy, it could be
many thousands.
Yeah, $1,500 in wiring alone if you'd run it yourself even.
Oh, absolutely. So that's a terrible idea. The thing that's really interesting is that if you look, first of all, let's just see where the technology is never going to stop marching forward, and it's going to in fact accelerate. Like, I bet a lot of people have a 4K TV. They may not even know what a 4K TV is, other than when they went to Costco, they wanted a good one and they bought a 4K TV.
Yep.
A 4K TV takes at a minimum 25 megabits per second in order to take that, to give you a 4K picture.
To give you a 4K image is 25 megabits a second.
Right. Now, the typical home in the United States, if it's not rural, and if it's on Comcast or Spectrum or AT&T, has a 200 megabit service.
200 megabits down.
200 megabits down. Now, usually they're not what is called symmetrical, which means 200 megabits up. So usually it's 200 megabits down and 20 up. So you think, well, 25 megabits is okay. I've got 200, so I'll be just fine. Right. Yeah. The problem is if you have to reach that TV via a Wi-Fi signal, every single thing between you and the antennas of it's generally a router. It sometimes is a router and a switch with antennas, is going to knock down the
transmission speed.
Yeah. Right. So if you look at, I actually looked up and said, what are the things in a house that affect transmission speed and how much? So for example, drywall knocks out 15%.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Huh. So if there's even one sheet of drywall between you and that signal, meaning if your router's in the closet and then you're trying to push to your TV, you already have a 15% loss going through one sheet of drywall.
A wood door is 20%. A concrete wall is 75%. A brick wall is 25%. And a metal door is 50%.
Interesting.
So every kind of material in that house that the Wi-Fi signal has to go through is going to do what you would call attenuate the signal. That means it's going to reduce the signal.
Degrade.
Now, the other thing that's interesting, though, is that if you look at Wi-Fi, most people at least know whether they're on 2.4 gigahertz, which is the radio frequency that the Wi-Fi is being broadcast on, or 5 gigahertz, okay? Now, 2.4 will give you, if you're within, say, 25 to 50 feet of the antenna, will give you at most 50 megabits per second. 5 will give you a faster signal, but it will give you less distance. So 2.4 will get you out maybe to 200 feet. 5 will get you out maybe 100 feet.
Interesting.
So there's all these different issues that you're dealing with.
So it's not just 5's better necessarily, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah, because if you have a greater distance to throw, that may be the wrong choice.
Right. And we're going to really kind of seriously geek out here for a minute.
I like this. This is good. I love that you prepped for this, Steve. Good job, man. Good stats.
Well, yeah, but I had to do something last night.
I mean, you are an electrical engineer from UT, so I shouldn't have expected any less.
Well, the other thing is, though, is that the whole march of consumption of bandwidth is going to continue. There'll be more and more things. Now, interestingly enough, that's just the materials between the source of the signal and the receptor, the TV in this case, if you're running your TV on Wi-Fi. That's one of the things that causes the signal to drop. Another thing could be interference from other devices. So, for example, if you had a microwave oven between your antennas and your TV,
you're in trouble.
And you turn that baby on, you got a lot of interesting things can start happening. Just the total number of devices. Have you ever looked at your house when you had company and seeing how many devices are on your Wi-Fi system.
It's crazy. I mean, we're talking, it could be 24.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got my watch, my phone, and my computer. I go nowhere without those three things.
Yeah.
My wife has her watch, her phone, her computer, and she has her iPad.
Yeah.
Now we have internet-connected devices like refrigerators that are all hooked up to your Wi-Fi.
Even my Miele washing machine has Wi-Fi connection because you have access to like 20 different cycles on your Miele app, so it has Wi-Fi.
Right. So at the end of the day, everyone is struggling to figure out how to get a great Wi-Fi system that can supply the needs of everything that you have. And that's great. And that's going to advance. Wi-Fi that goes into homes today compared to what it used to be, better. We have, the kind that you get that they sell you with the cable modem. And then we have one that's called a mesh network, and you have repeaters, and there's different kinds of Wi-Fi systems. And you can expect all those to get better. Now, like everything else, though, and I don't want us to over-engineer everybody's house, but I want to swing all the way back to the start. Let's define wiring for a minute, because that's getting a little spooky. Okay, so what is low voltage wiring?
I think of it as a Cat 6 wire, which is 4 pairs of stranded wire, right?
Okay, that's a Cat 6. That's one kind. A speaker wire is a low voltage wire.
Yeah, and that's usually what, 12, 14, 16 gauge, maybe copper, maybe aluminum, and also a multiple strand of wire into one thicker gauge.
Right. And if you have a security system that you wire to all the connectors on all the windows and the doors, and anywhere else you're going to put any kind of, like a glass break detector or whatever, that's a different kind of low voltage wire.
Yep.
Most houses today have at least a retrofitted coax cable. And believe it or not, coax cable is still pretty cool.
That's interesting.
And then what about the HDMI cable from that fancy Denon receiver that you bought to the back of your TV? That's a low voltage.
Yeah, that's right.
It's got a very limited amount of distance. Like you can't run HDMI cables 200 feet. You don't want to buy them, and they won't do it. So when you talk about low voltage, you're talking about, let's just UTP cable, that's Cat 6. That's what we were just talking about. A lot of people would call that Ethernet, okay? Fiber optic.
Yep.
Now fiber optic's getting pretty interesting.
I have fiber optic at my house.
Yeah.
I ran it from the D-Mark outside to where my closet is because I know that I've got fiber optic in my neighborhood. And then I also bought a Samsung fiber optic cable to run from where my TV is to where because I've got a frame TV which hangs in the wall and doesn't allow access behind to the location where my panel is going to be as well. Yeah.
So speaker wire, thermostat wire. The control system for your air conditioning is a different kind of wiring. We mentioned coax, and then security, which is like 2 or 4 wires and a little cable. And then you get, and every one of those things you can buy individually pretty inexpensively. Then the next leg up from there is people do what are called structured wiring systems. And that's where you might have a fiber optic cable, a coax cable, 2 Cat 6 cables, maybe even a security wire. And now we're getting to be a pretty big bundle here.
All bundled in one wire.
All bundled in one sheath. And I'm going to take that everywhere in the house.
That's nice.
Well, it is and it isn't. One, it's more expensive. 2, in a lot of places, you won't need all those.
Yeah, that's true.
Like 2 houses ago, I did a structured system, and I was so proud I had fiber to every room in my house. Never used any of it. But a foot of that stuff is expensive compared to all the mass-produced individual ones. So I think first of all, if you have a chance to wire your house for your alarm system, take fiber to the TVs, take fiber to the outside of the house in case you're going to do anything like on a patio or something. And then obviously get your alarm company. A lot of alarm systems, the company will come in and do your pre-wire for free. because they're hoping to get your alarm system.
Yep.
And basically, they either want to sell you the equipment, that's the low margin part of the alarm business, but they want to monitor it.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, what we have is we have an extraordinarily disparate group of things that are called low voltage. Now, then you get to the middle of the pack, and this is the one that's coming at us real fast, and that's DC. And
direct current wiring.
Right. And all of our lighting is going to go DC because it's all going to be LED.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually an interesting situation coming up now, whether it's your commercial electrical contractor, who in the past has been your AC wiring guy. Is he going to do the DC wiring, or is the low voltage guy going to do it?
Right.
And there's a collision going on, even in the type of trade that you want.
Interesting.
And
how long do you think we are away from DC wiring in houses?
Oh, I think it's coming at us really fast.
Think so?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, the lights themselves last forever and use far less total power, and they don't put out any heat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the best deal anyone ever had. Put better light of whatever color you want with whatever control you want to put on it. Put it in your house. Don't generate heat. Use less power.
It's pretty incredible.
Well, it ought to be code. I mean, we shouldn't be building houses with incandescent lighting.
Yeah.
Is my opinion. Why would you do it?
Yep.
But that's coming. But that's yet another kind of wiring that's going to go in your house. So setting aside who's going to do it, because in different cases and depending upon the levels of complexity, you might have a low voltage guy like our guy who does our homes for us. Then you might have the electrician doing the DC, or you might have somebody separate doing the DC, because a lot of times if you think about whole house control systems and you have Lutron, Crestron, Savant, as you get into the much more expensive homes and the systems that we've put in, a lot of times those are the guys that want to do the pre-wire.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there going, well, hey, I used to be Lutron. Lutron made its entrance to the market running shades and lighting,
mm-hmm.
right? So they're sitting there thinking, well, we're going to handle all your DC. Crestron is more of an integration system. So what they're saying is no matter what you've got out there, whether it's a TV, an alarm system, a camera.
We want to control it.
Yeah. And Savant is more like Crestron, except that at Savant, they're trying to do all the programming for you and trying to minimize the problem of disparate devices. And what's really fascinating to me coming out of high tech and then into this is that for years and years in the IT world, we've dealt with disparate systems and having to write special code so that each one of them, we can talk to them and we can manage them. This problem has been around for 50 years. I'm just seeing it now in the home. I feel so sorry for homeowners because it's not going to get simpler. It's going to get harder and more complex.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if there is any reason why you ought to spend money pre-wiring a home, it's because it takes a lot of uncertainty out of things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, if for example, I remember 10 years ago, just to do an alarm system pre-wire was $400. That's not a lot of money. I mean, 10 years ago on a several hundred, on a small 3-bedroom, 2-bath, $350,000 home, $400 is affordable.
Yep.
If you don't do that, then that means that every contactor on every window and every door is a battery-powered device. Mm-hmm. It's running its own frequency. Guess what? These frequencies can interfere with Wi-Fi frequencies.
Yep.
Now the latest systems are actually running on your Wi-Fi network.
Wow.
So for $400, at least we're not worried about the signal. And that's really what low voltage wiring systems are. It's a signaling system. Mm-hmm. If you remember, like if you go way back, 50, 100 years ago and you talk to the military, those were the signal cores.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a radio operator is. He was in the signal cores. So these are signaling systems. But we have disparate systems. And what wiring does for us is it allows us to eliminate one source of confusion from the world that we're all living in inside these houses. So, for example, if you have an Ethernet cable from your internet modem, your cable modem, if that's where you get your service, you have your internet modem. That modem may or may not have a switch and a router on it, which divides the signals up. Then you go and you send that Ethernet cable from right there to the back of your TV or to the media server, like a Roku device or Sony or an Amazon Fire, whatever you're using for your media server, and you got a hardwired connection. The value of that is it's going to give you better performance. You don't have to worry about all the other loads on the Wi-Fi system for people who want to sit with a PC in their lap and not be plugged into the wall somewhere.
Yep.
And it's a super inexpensive way to do it. So that's why I do it. It's just, it eliminates the controversy.
It gives you not just peace of mind, but it brings you reliability too, right?
Right. And then you're not hiring expensive people to come in and sort this out.
That is a huge point that I want to spend a minute on. And it's not that I want to eliminate someone's job. I think there's huge value in low voltage contractors out there. And in fact, this is kind of, I'm taking a bit of a tangent, but if you'll permit me for a minute, when I was thinking about all these things for my house, I wired my low voltage in December, so about 6 months ago, something like that. I was trying to figure out, do I go with low voltage contractor or do I do it myself? And I was leaning towards doing it myself because I wanted to make a video about the process. And honestly, I just wanted to understand it because I feel a little like I know a lot about the tech in our houses and I know a lot about nerdy stuff, but I didn't feel like I had a good sense for how the low voltage works. What are the processes? And I also really wanted a reliable system and a system that didn't rely on me calling a tech to the tune of $100 and some when I have a problem. Gosh, sorry, I'm tongue twisted here. About 5 or 6 years ago, I retrofitted at my house a Control 4 system. And no disrespect to Control 4, but it has not been particularly reliable for me. And I've had to have the tech back several times. And currently, this Control 4 system at my house, which I've just sold, my current house, is a brick. And that's really frustrating to me that I've got a 4 or 5 year old system that's a brick. And if you talk to our past clients, Steve, I can think of one in particular who had a system, it became a brick, it was unreliable, it was a hassle, they switched to another one. It's a big sore spot in the building process for him. And it doesn't necessarily reflect bad on us, but it also doesn't give him warm and fuzzies about us either. Mm-hmm. So I think a big takeaway for me as we're talking about this, and I'm picking your brain about this, is how do we get really reliable for both our personal houses, but the houses that we build for our clients, so that when we have someone who really doesn't have any idea what to do, and they're saying, all right, Steve and Matt, what do I do for my house? Mm-hmm. Which contractor should I use? Which system do I use? I got a buddy that has Savant or Control 4 or Crestron. Should I do that or should I not? We want to give them really good informed answers and help them to set correct expectations. Because it's when we don't meet expectations that things go south in our relationship with clients.
Yeah, and I think we need to position things differently. I mean, it's like what we aren't doing, Matt, that we need to really think about and train our team on is, first of all, how important is this? It's incredibly important to our client. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do in the house? You're going to, do you want to be safe and secure? Do you want cameras? Mm-hmm. Do you want lighting control? Yep. Also, we have an older population. Heck, I'm part of the older population. One of the things that I thought about was how much do I really care about the fidelity of my whole house music system? Or do I just care about being able to hear it anywhere I am?
Right.
Because I don't hear as well as I used to.
Yeah.
I don't see as well as I used to. I'm 67 years old now.
Okay.
So
you don't look that old, Steve.
but a 4K TV, yeah, I'm okay and I'm excited about it. What I don't want though is I don't want it to be all frizzy and fuzzy because it's getting a bad Wi-Fi signal. Yeah,
and if I'm interpreting what you're saying, you're also saying, look, I don't need some ridiculously expensive Macintosh, $10,000 speaker system because my ears aren't as good as they used to be anyways.
Yeah, I could turn it up maybe and hear it.
Right, but what I would like though is music in more places, so that as I exit my bathroom into my bedroom, I'm not trying to still hear that podcast on a speaker that's 30 yards away or 20 yards away, and I'm having to crank it up. I want maybe more speakers that are maybe less exciting fidelity wise, but there's just a greater number of them. So I'm not having to turn the volume way up.
Right. And, honestly, I'm kind of a minimalist in this regard now. I did do Sonos, but I'm doing a lot of Sonos wireless. But
Tim is a huge Sonos guy too, which because you guys were big on Sonos, I ended up doing a ton of Sonos in my house.
But this then brings the other issue is that this is not just about wiring. This is about all these different systems. Do they have impacts on each other? What are their impacts on my life? How do I want to interact with them? How do I want to control them? How do I want to manage them? And how am I going to enjoy them?
Yeah.
And what's the size of my pocketbook?
Yep.
Okay. And think about it. It's getting worse. So you go buy a Ring doorbell. Well, the Ring doorbell is not only going to connect potentially to your old chime so that you can hear it anywhere in the house, but it's also going to connect to your Wi-Fi. Why? So that it can give you a camera picture of who's at your front door.
Yep.
So I've now put an additional load on my Wi-Fi system. Just that one move, okay? But now what else is going on? Well, what if almost every appliance maker is now coming out with some kind of iPhone app or Android app that you can interact with and is becoming integral to the management of the device. So whether it's a refrigerator or an appliance, we're all going with smart thermostats. And it goes on and on and on. Now I want whole house music. I want to be able to jump on the internet wherever I am in the house and have 110 volts of perfect internet every time I'm on there.
Yep.
So we have a disparate number of systems by a large range of suppliers that are going to show up in everybody's house. And some people go, and I want it all to be perfectly managed from and the slang term is from a single pane of glass. That means that when I look at my phone, I get a view of everything, whether it's my security systems, my cameras, my music, my lighting, my shades, my appliances, and it's coming all the way down to what's in the fridge. Do I need to pick up milk on the way home? And pretty soon the refrigerator will tell you to pick up milk on the way home. And ultimately it will order the milk and they will bring it out and put it in your car as you go driving by.
Wow. So
it's a really complex problem. Now, we don't spend with a lot of our clients a ton of time teaching them everything we know about how to insulate a house. They expect us to know that.
Yep.
That's really where this industry has to get to. And every major, I'm the guy, whether it's Crestron or Savant or any of those guys, they're going to come at you with a plan and a solution that costs a lot of money that says, we're going to handle this for you. However, I've yet to see one that handles it perfectly. So if you want it all on it, and if you want it to be perfect, just be prepared to spend some money. But the cheapest part of the whole thing is the pre-wire.
Yeah.
And so I think what I want our clients to have is if we build them a new house or if we take their house all the way down to the studs, I think the minimum that we owe them is a pre-wire that makes sense. I don't think we have to throw everything in the garden at them.
Yep. But
we ought to put all the wires in that we can because it's so inexpensive. And I guarantee you, I think I have 28 Ethernet connections hardwired in my house.
That's a lot.
It is because when you look at the guy who does that, he charges you per connection. He doesn't say I'm going to be here for 8 hours.
Right.
He says I do those for $50 a piece.
Yeah, for sure. And Steve, let me switch gears on this and just talk budget for a second. What do you think? What do you think our average budget for pre-wire is on our houses? Is there any number you could throw out there?
It's less than 5.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It was $5,000 a house for pre-wire.
Yeah, and that's a very maxed out pre-wiring.
Yeah.
I think we could
probably do it for less. We do it for $2,500 to $3,500 probably.
Well, it has to do with the size home. This is
the size home.
If you're going to build a 2,400 or an 1,800 square foot home that's got to compete in the entry level home buyer market, I think you can get it down to $500.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this though brings up that big topic that you and I talk about all the time, and that is what's the real objective of building a home?
Mm-hmm.
Why did this major national home builder go to a Wi-Fi certified house? Did he take walls out so he'd have to send the signals less through it? What he actually did was he hooked up with a pretty good Wi-Fi network manufacturer, and he said, "Here's the footprint. Where do I have to put it in order to be able to get this much signal strength to this many rooms?"
Ah, interesting.
Okay, and by doing that, I spend $500 on a device instead of $500 on wiring and then devices and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's not a future-proofed house. It is a way to save money.
Yeah, it is. There is some thoughtfulness there that I appreciate, that they spent the time to talk to somebody about, where would be the best placement for this equipment to get the best that I could. And all the equipment manufacturers, the speaker manufacturers of the world, the device manufacturers, they're assuming that their products are going into houses that are, between 5 and 50 years old, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have the luxury of only putting their products in new homes. And so they're, coming up with more and more products that are intended for Wi-Fi and not wired connections, right?
Right. And look, Wi-Fi will get better.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of thought to myself, well, if I'm, what's kind of the minimum setup that I'd want? Knowing that Wi-Fi will be a desired source of signaling because I'm going to buy a lot of things that need a Wi-Fi signal.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going to, the whole Internet of Things. And the rush to that. So, but if you think about it in terms of isolating things. So, for example, most people today either have a coax cable to a cable TV set-top box,
mm-hmm.
or at least an Ethernet cable to a media server for streaming media,
yep.
like an Apple TV or a Roku device or an Amazon Fire, for example. I'm sorry if I'm leaving any others out. I'm not picking on them. Those are the 3 that came to my mind. But if you get that cable from your internet modem and your router switch to that media streaming device, now it's not going to consume your Wi-Fi. It's not going to have an interfering signal. It's going to have the ability to grow. When we go to, there's already 8K TVs out.
Yeah.
So why not at least do that?
Makes sense.
It doesn't. That wire is and not even a structured wire, just a Cat 6 cable.
Mm-hmm.
Probably your biggest problem is that somebody accidentally cuts it. While the house is
then
being
you're
built.
in trouble. Steve, we're running short on time because we got to get to our project managers meeting here in a little bit. This is a topic that actually would be a fun one for you to get together with Bill Blaylock, who owns Concept Electronics and does a lot of wiring on our houses. And for the two of you, as the electrical engineering nerd on my team and the wiring nerd on Bill's side, maybe to have a follow-up, a part 2 podcast on this. And actually, I'm headed down on vacation. I wonder if you could do that next week while I'm gone. Maybe we could do this as a part 1, part 2 episode, right?
Yeah, I think we should. And because there's a lot of things we haven't even begun to talk about. There, particularly if you really want to do some fancy stuff. Mm-hmm. There's some really cool new stuff that's out there. And we ought to also talk about what's meets minimum. Mm-hmm. What should you do if you're on a really strict budget?
I like that.
And look, let's face it, almost everybody's on a strict budget.
Yeah, that's right.
And we often do build a house where somebody can spend a lot of money on this kind of topic. But it's up to us to help all of our clients and all of our listeners to sort out what do I actually need to do while the walls are open.
That's right. Totally.
And do it in a way that makes financial sense.
I'm going to line Steve up with a guest host position for me while I'm on vacation, because we're about to pull the RV around the country, hitting 5 national parks with my Lance camper and my Chevy 2500. So, Steve, if you and Bill would get together while I'm gone and fill that slot on that Friday when I'm absent, I would really appreciate that. I think this is a topic that deserves a deeper depth. And of all the things that I feel like I'm really knowledgeable about with construction, this is one that I don't feel like I'm really knowledgeable enough. So I would love to have you take over and host that for me if you're willing.
I'm happy to do that.
All right, man. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the podcast. This was a deep dive into what you need for wiring, future-proof wiring, and thinking about what is kind of the minimum for both your house and for your client's house. But stay tuned for that part 2 with Steve and Bill Blaylock. Guys, if you're not currently subscribed, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Our podcast comes out every single Friday. We're over on buildshownetwork.com if you want to watch the video version of this. Sorry, I'm bumping the mic because I'm talking here. And we've also got this, of course, on all the major outlets, so iTunes and all those other guys as well. Hit that subscribe button. New content every Friday. Follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show podcast.